Hello, my name is Jade Denson, and I'm the Director of Member and Community Engagement with the Minnesota Technology Association. And today, I'm excited, I'm pumped, because we're going to virtually cozy up to the fire as we host a fireside chat to talk about why personal brand is so important for technology leaders. I think we all can agree in our tech community, brand is often a skill set that is a little bit overlooked. One of our CIO leaders in the Twin Cities community in particular, Tammy Lynn Jonas, said something really profound in a conversation about brand a few weeks ago. And she said, it's never too early to start thinking about your brand. And I could not agree more, which is why we're having this conversation today, because it's super relevant. In order to do this well, I'm lucky enough to be joined by three awesome guests that are above me to the side of me since this is virtual. First, we have the Sarah McNally, who's a personal brand expert and the CEO of Transform, the people brand company. Sarah and I actually came to know each other at a conference in 2019, I believe, back when we oddly gathered in rooms of like hundreds of people, which is wild to think about now as a concept. But in any case, I saw her essentially demystify the concept of personal brand for a room full of 200 plus technology leaders. And walking out of that session, I saw how evangelized they were into being brand believers. So when I was leading our ACE leadership cohort, I had to bring Sarah in to talk about her approach to brand for our 2020 class of ACE leaders. For those of you that have never heard of ACE, ACE is a leadership program ran through the Minnesota Technology Association. And this year's cohort did a lot of different stuff, but the focus of ACE is to really emphasize the awareness of different leadership styles, expand leaders' knowledge of Minnesota's technology ecosystem, deepen their core leadership competencies, and expand their networks, and some other stuff. Each year, 25 to 30 companies demonstrate a clear investment in their employees' development while giving emerging leaders the tools they need to produce stronger outcomes and effectively lead within their organizations. My other two guests for today come from this year's 2020 ACE leadership class. The cohort that has experienced a ton in light of how tumultuous 2020 has been, but they've been good sports, and from what I can tell, they're learning a ton. So today we're joined by Michelle Hines, who's a technology director with Thomson Reuters, and Tam Gregersen, who is the director of enterprise security and operations with EQ Holdings. So these two ACE leaders, both Tam and Michelle, will be in conversation with Sarah and I as we talk through our experiences and insights as it relates to personal brand. Part of why we're all coming together is really in response to how transformative the brand session was for me and our ACE leaders. Prior to this session with Sarah, many folks thought brand was a frivolous or superficial thing to care about. But I think coming out of that conversation, we realized it's so much more than that. So today we're really gonna nuance what brand means and bring that to this fireside chat. Today's fireside chat is very conversational, but we hope it to be super insightful for you all. So without further ado, again, let's cozy up to the fire and talk about all things personal brand. And we're gonna start the conversation. Sarah, I'm gonna put you in the hot seat, and have you talk a little bit about why, what's the most important thing to understand about personal brand, just to tee it off.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me be on this fireside chat. I wish we were all sitting around a fire. I will pick Tam or Michelle's. They kind of look like they might be at the same fire, but with a couple of differences. So I think the most important thing to understand about brand is it begins with a fundamental question. So I'm going to speak about a personal brand, and we can also talk about how that connects to when brands we think about corporate product. But from a personal brand perspective, the fundamental question that we ask is, what is it like to be in a relationship with you? And so now let me back into that a little bit. So when you think about a brand, A brand is not a logo. It's not a tagline. The brand is actually the experience that you have with a product or service. So if you think about, a restaurant that you used to go to, or, a coffee shop that we used to go to, or we will go to again, but these businesses that we go to, and even the companies that we work for, the customer, ourselves, as a customer, we have experiences with those brands. And that is how those brands are actually branded, is by the experience. I'm not branding the restaurant, the airline I fly, by how well their advertising campaign did. I'm branding them by the experience I have. Well, your brand is the experience that others have with you. And so thinking about, well, what is it like to be in a relationship with me is just a great starting point. And then the reason why it's so important to understand what it's like to be in a relationship with us is because it gives us power. Self-awareness is the only thing we actually have control over in our lives. I mean, there's all these external circumstances and forces that are completely outside of our control. But how the level with which we understand ourselves is within our control and actually helps influence our lives. And so understanding more about who we are, what drives our behavior, what it's like to be in a relationship with us, helps us get more of what we want. So that would be why I would say understanding brand is so important.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed working with the ACE leaders, and I enjoy working with technology leaders. And like you experienced, Jade, at this conference I spoke at last year, because it usually is an aha. And I find technology leaders are quite reflective and introspective. And so it was really fun working with ACE leaders, and Tam and Michelle absolutely were to engage people in that conversation. So it's awesome to be back in conversation with you. Now that we've had some time, a couple of months since that workshop. So my question, and Tam or Michelle, either one of you can take it, but I think it would be great if you both answer it from your perspective, is what do you know about your brand now that you didn't realize before?
I mean, I can jump in here, Tam, if you wanna go next. So for me, my main realization was that honestly, I haven't focused enough on my non-professional brand. I've really been focused primarily on my brand as it relates to my professional career. And you know how we talked, you had just mentioned, Sarah, how we talked about, brand can really be defined by like what it is like for someone to be in a relationship with us. And we talked about how that was both professionally and non-professionally. And so that was a new realization for me, that I really needed to spend more time and energy kind of focusing on sort of my non-professional or personal life brand, if you will.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I, to be honest, wasn't really thinking about personal branding at all in my personal life or professional. I was more heads down, do good work at my job, not really think about how can I communicate what I've done to more people. So it was kind of eye-opening going through Sarah's workshop, and just kind of start to realize the importance of building that personal brand, how important it can be, and particularly in how it can enhance a person's career.
Awesome. So I guess I would really love to dovetail off of what you just said, Tam, and kind of zoom in to professional, but specifically within technology. Michelle and Tam, from your perspective, why is brand specifically important for technology leaders to be thinking about?
But first, technology allows us to connect with more people, and potentially reach a wider audience. So, I mean, that's more of what I see when I think about personal brand and technology.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I think brand really matters as a technology leader, because as a leader, you're a role model, and people look to you to kind of guide and coach and mentor and set direction for others. And so if you're not paying enough attention to how you represent yourself to others, it's possible that people may not respect you. They may not want to follow you. And I think that can prevent teams from sort of working as optimally and gelling and performing as productively as they can. I mean, in a workplace, obviously we want high performing teams. And so in order to do that, I think it starts with the leader, and you want to have as high performing teams as possible, teams that gel.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that. I think about sort of what's happened with COVID-19 in particular. And within most organizations, technology leaders are leading the business because the business is not enabled without technology. So to your point, Michelle, when thinking about sort of the interconnectedness across the company, your chief digital officer may be leading the charge heavier than your CEO at a respective company at this time, because we all have to be thinking about digital transformation and how technology is enabling what we do from a business perspective in a really different way. So in this particular moment, brand is huge for technology leaders, because not just the technology organization has to be bought in, the broader company has to be bought in to really move in a different way during this time. So it's such a good point.
Yeah, and I love how this tees up, again, you know, there's different brands. So there's your personal brand, and then even if you look at your teams, like your team within your organization has a brand, the technology department has a brand, and then, you know, your organization. And so how your team is even perceived, or the technology division or department is perceived, again, it's about perception and being in a relationship, impacts influence. And I mean, my personal mission is to bridge the gap between marketing and other functions of the organization to really be in alignment around who do we say we are externally, but also who do we say we are internally, and are we on the same page, and have a heightened awareness that we get to be aware about how we come across to people, because we're being branded. And if we're being branded that we're not easy to work with, or it's complicated, or it's confusing, or I don't feel partnership, that's how you're branded, whether you intend it or not. You know, if you remember in the brand course, the personal brand course, we talk about how strong brands are built, and people can't see our intentions. They can only see our actions. And so by our actions, we are branded. So we can intend to be a certain way, which is why it's so important to lift the lid and think, how are my actions actually branding me, you know, and create some accountability there. You know, I want to be branded this way. So how do I tweak how I'm showing up so I get credit for who I am and how I want to be perceived? So all of that is connected.
Sarah, I feel like you may have like jumped into my mind and read what I was going to ask next when thinking about just kind of team perceptions. You kind of do that sometimes. That's fair. So Tam and Michelle, I would love to just hear you talk a little bit about how have you, since the session in particular, but just in general, how have you thought intentionally about strengthening your brand within your specific team? So you both lead different departments within your respective organizations. So what's coming to mind with the intentionality you're trying to bring into how they perceive you as a leader?
I think a lot of it is, you know, Sarah kind of touched on, was what's the, you know, having that consistency within the team, you know, first establishing what are, you know, maybe the values, and do they align with if the company has the core values, aligning with the core values, but having our own values within the team that aligned with that to give that perception to the rest of the business of what we're all about. And, you know, being consistent, being helpful, business oriented, you know, those type of things. So I'm still working on trying to develop that today. So, but that is something that's on my radar for sure.
Yep, definitely. Michelle, what are your thoughts?
So from my perspective, I'm fairly new in my current role. I've been in it for about 4 months.
Okay.
And I'll be honest, it's a bit challenging to try to establish your brand with a new team when you're not able to interact with people face to face like you could. Like when you're in the office, you know, you could be passing people in the hallway or stopping by their desks, that sort of thing. So what I tried to do was really let people on my team know that I'm excited and interested to be in the team, to learn about our products. I've been kind of diving in and asking a lot of questions and really trying to come up to speed as quickly as possible in this space. Another thing that I've been trying to do is, you know, I genuinely care about people, and I'm truly interested in people personally, and I'm trying to, you know, get that across to people. So I've been meeting with people and, you know, really wanting to get to know and understand them both, you know, personally, professionally, obviously. And, you know, I want to meet, you know, we're on virtual work now. And so, you know, I want to meet their families. I want to see their pets, you know, see their gardens. What are they proud of? What makes them tick? And so that's been something I've been trying to do. And then kind of the last thing is I've been trying to show people that, you know, I care about trying to inject some fun into our day to day. I think a lot of times fun happens a little bit more organically and spontaneously when you're in the office together. But I think it's harder virtually. And so really trying to show that I feel that fun is important, and I want that to be a part of our day to day.
Yeah. What I like about what you both said is you are being really intentional about like articulating that you're in process of trying to build a specific brand. And I think Lars Leafblad actually on our session with Ace talked about how it's really impactful to the people that are perceiving your brand to say, I'm working on this, and being really direct with them about like, my intention is X, Y, and Z. And like, that's what I'm working towards, and being able to really translate what you're trying to do and verbally saying it. So to Sarah's point, people can't see what's inside your head. So part of brand is being really honest about what you're trying to do with people and how you want them to be feeling as they're in a relationship with you. And I think that came out with both your responses. So awesome.
Yeah, and I think you both reflected back those key characteristics that we talked about that all strong brands share, and the first one being distinctive. And Tam, you mentioned values. So being distinctive is having high standards and clear values. So for yourself as a leader, knowing what you stand for, and then taking it one step further and saying, you know, if honesty, even, I mean, Michelle, fun is 100% a value and a standard. So knowing that's one of your values and taking it one step further and saying, how does someone experience that? And then fabulous point about the current climate that we all have to work in. And so in the second characteristics is relevance. So understanding what's important to others. And so as a leader, it's really important for you to be relevant to your teams. And so there are those 4 questions, thinking in reverse. What do they need? What do they value? What do they expect? And, oh, I lost the 4th one. You get the gist, but then the 3rd one being consistency. And so Michelle, you talked about, connecting with people. What's important to you? What's your environment like? Show me your kids, your pets, your gardens, all of those things. And then Tam, you mentioned consistency, because that's where you build the trust. So, A+ students, A+.
This wasn't intended to be a quiz, but like you passed it anyway.
Star pupils. Well, let me ask you guys, and we've started to talk about this a little bit, but I think this is important for the audience, because Jade even said it at the beginning. Often technology, not even technology, I would say there are lots of different places in an organization that think that brand is not their responsibility. That sits in marketing's corner. And so now, with all that you've learned and what you've been thinking about, what would you say is the role of technology in the brand experience? Even if you guys are not customer facing, how do you help with that alignment?
Go ahead, Tam. Sure, I could go.
Well, I think, it kind of goes back to, technology helps us connect with a wider audience and more people, have a broader range to project your brand, project your company's brand. So, it all ties back together with technology.
Yeah.
And from my perspective, I think technology is looked at, like in particularly in our company, we're developing, products that we sell. We need to be collaborative. We need to be strong partners. We need to be known for delivering. We need to be forward thinking, to be innovative. I think those are things that are all really important, and make an entire business sort of come together and gel and be productive and successful.
I also think, Sarah, just going back to your comment of, I don't experience the coffee shop's logo. I experience the ambiance, the customer service, like all those really like experiential things. And in the now, all we experience is a virtual experience of a company, which is enabled by their technology. So the user experience of their website, like how quickly things are sent out automatically through their like automated systems, like all those things are really at the heart of how we're sort of dissecting and making decisions about brands we care about right in the now. I would say like most of the brands I know and love, a lot of how I experience their customer service and how they work with people is based on things that are enabled by a technology department. So it's kind of, in some ways, it's do or die for a brand in the now in particular. No pressure for you all, but.
It's so true. And that's, that's why I would always say to a technology group, even though you're not customer facing, you're still contributing to a customer focused brand, because that's the one thing that all organizations, all businesses have in common, that their sole purpose is to attract and keep customers. Like that's the sole purpose of any business. You don't exist without a customer. And I know, and you guys would know as well, when there's someone responsible for that direct customer experience, but when you back it up and you see all the things that happen behind it to get to that point, if those things don't feel smooth and aligned and it's complicated, and like we talked about, it's not a good experience, it makes it even that much harder to deliver a good customer experience. Like the hurdles that people have to overcome to have that interaction be positive, versus having it be positive all the way through. Like everyone's collaborative on the same team, focused on one goal, which is the customer. That alignment creates a completely different culture and customer experience.
Yeah, I think about that a lot with MnTech as an organization. Like over the last few months, like the platform we use for people to register for our events, the platform we use to host virtual meetings or webinars, like all those things end up being a reflection of us in some ways. So it's like technology really does drive how people experience you.
Yes, you are very important. Very, very important. How are we doing for time? Are we good?
Yeah, I think we're good. I'm wondering, I did have one specific question that I wanted to ask this group. So when thinking about brand being more top of mind to you now, whether it be your personal brand, your professional brand, your brand within your specific team that you lead or within the broader company, obviously it's more top of mind now. What are helpful tools that you've been leaning on when thinking about your personal brand?
Well, so far for me, it's been, going through the workshop that Sarah had, and, just kind of opening my eyes to what is maybe I should be doing and what I should be, spending some time on and carving out time to focus on those areas. But that would, kind of one of the questions I was going to ask is what are some other good resources and tools that you or Sarah would recommend?
Yeah, I put us back in the hot seat. I love it, Tam. We can handle it. Sarah, do you have thoughts? I can definitely chime in too.
Well, in the spirit of, I look at it from self-discovery and self-awareness. So in the spirit of if what is coming up is I want to understand myself more, there's tools going down that path, which I would say is, more leadership development, and for an individual, I mean, you could go into coaching, to really understand how do I become the most influential leader that I can be, because a leader is someone who has followers, otherwise it's just a title. But there's also, I think, great opportunity to bring your team into the conversation, and there's a lot of different ways that you can do that, and have that dialogue of how do we want to be perceived as a team around brand. I mean, there are fabulous, branding expertise out there. I mean, these days you can, Google, really anything to get some ideas around that. And of course, I have resources on my website as well. But it depends on the track that you want to go down. Another cool thing, I mean, this isn't necessarily a resource, but it would be interesting if you haven't, is to you know, have coffee, like virtual
Yes, I was
coffee
just gonna say
with
that.
the marketing director or something, you know, and have, you know, maybe even bring a group together to say, I'm in this conversation right now. How can we have this conversation together? What would be the
Yeah.
impact of our organization if we actually had this conversation together? I mean, I think that would be amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting. Two thoughts based on what you just said, Sarah. I know Natalie, who's also in the ACE cohort this year, she leads marketing and communications for Digital River. And she, in the conversation with you, said, yes, we'd love to have people from other teams come talk to us about how they can be thinking more thoughtfully about brand for themselves and for the company. Because at the end of the day, personal brand is a direct line into how people perceive company brands. So they want to be able to have those conversations and would eat it up if you approach them. So I think that's a really great perspective. The other two things I was thinking about is whether you officially shadow or stalk brands that you appreciate or do it kind of discreetly. Like I think about leaders that I wholeheartedly admire from a brand perspective. Mike McNamara, CIO at Target, someone I think about. Richard Walker with York Solutions is someone I think about. Sarah Engstrom with CHS is someone I think about. And I think spending time with them and being in conversation with them is helpful to better understand like how they're thinking, what they think about. And they're not talking about brand directly, but they're talking about their approaches to stuff. And I think it seeps through in some ways. Like I had a really great conversation with Richard Walker about how he dedicates time to building relationships like weekly. And that was transformative for me because I think I want my brand to be someone who really values authentic relationships because it's truth for me. So like, how do I make that translate to other people that that's something I value and that's a way to do it. So I think being in conversation with other people that you admire is a way to sort of incorporate tools for thinking about brand. And then the last one I can think of, and I should be an unofficial ambassador for LinkedIn, but I think LinkedIn is a great way to sort of really dive into understanding brand. You definitely have a knee-jerk reaction to people's brands you don't enjoy on LinkedIn and those that you do. So really diving into their pages and thinking about like how they're representing themselves and thinking critically about what you enjoy about their brand and how you can translate that to your own, I think has been really helpful for me, especially in a virtual world.
Yeah, those are good ideas. Really good.
Michelle, what are tools that come to mind for you?
Yeah, so for me, honestly, most of the brand working that I've done throughout my career has been more on sort of the personal interaction side.
Yeah.
It wasn't until more recently that I would say I kind of focused on more of additionally the digital brand.
Yeah.
And you know, you touched on LinkedIn, Jade, for example. You know, I think that's a fabulous tool for, you know, wanting to kind of digitally prepare and get your brand out there. You know, I mean, you can get it out there for people you don't even know, for example. I mean, they can learn about you. But I also think equally important is sort of that networking piece that we touched on earlier, and you know, personally interacting with people, because I think personal interaction can help you build your brand through, you know, important things such as like your energy and your body language and tone. And I mean, so, you know, maybe you're saying something or maybe you type something and people get the wrong impression. Like if you're there with your energy and your tone and your body language, people can have a better chance of sort of understanding what it is, or your point that you're trying to make, than they might if you were writing it or something like that. So I think personal interactions are key as well.
Yeah. I will say what you just said makes me think of Sarah's point around consistency. And I think part of my like personal brand is positivity and high energy and stuff like that. And I've realized in order to be consistent, I need to take time off. So just thinking about like what you need to sustain your brand in some ways and what you need to do to pour into yourself so that people experience you in a consistent way is something important to think about too.
And an authentic way, you know.
Yeah.
I'm often in a lot of conversation where, because I think a lot of the personal brand conversation can be about what does my LinkedIn profile look like, what clothes I'm wearing, you know, and that I guess is just not, it's not my approach to it. It goes deeper. It's about, you know, the authenticity, and it's just the beginning of really doing, it can be just the beginning of doing some really deep internal reflection, which again, for me, gives us the power. It gives us, it's empowering. It puts us in the driver's seat of our lives, because in my work over 12 years, I have observed that we are in an epidemic of victimhood. I meet so many people who feel like a victim of their circumstances. And so understanding how you're coming across, but by connecting to who am I really, what do I value, what am I good at, what are my gifts and talents, and owning that space. And so if you are more of I was just having this conversation with a coaching client yesterday where we were talking about how he is a more observant, reflective, quiet listener. But we live in a world, and it is slowly shifting, but we live in a world in a country where we extroverted energy, celebrated, honored. It's how leadership has been put up. And so we're starting to really starting to humble more. But so being authentic is so important, because like you were saying, Michelle, people, even through technology, we experience someone's energy, and we know when someone isn't authentic, and it's super uncomfortable, whether they're being inauthentic because they're trying to get something from you, or they're being inauthentic because they don't actually know who they are. Either it's uncomfortable, and the more authentic you are in understanding this is my brand, the better the experiences, the better the interaction. Even if you have to have hard conversations, even if the circumstances is not exactly positive, the more authentic you are, the better it will be received. So
it's interesting that you say that, Sarah. What to me that makes me think about is people always talk about networking as being like the most painful thing in the world, and I'm always like, that's so confusing for me. But I had a really great conversation with a friend that talked about, like, I think it's because you only talk about things you care about. Like, you're never in conversation with people about stuff that doesn't matter to you. So it doesn't feel like networking. It feels like you're talking to someone you don't know, but it's never about something that's not relevant to you. And I think that applies there as well. Like, talk about the things you care about. You have something in common with everyone. And if you zoom in on things that mean something to you, it's not fake, it's not forced, it's really authentic and a natural way to build relationships with people you don't know. But yeah, that comes to mind for me as you talk about authenticity.
Yeah, and I totally agree that it needs to be genuine. And, everybody has their own superpowers, right? I mean, everybody has their superpowers that they can build a brand around. And so you don't have to worry about being somebody or something that you're really not. You should embrace who you are and, build your brand around what you're best at and what you have to showcase, I think. So I agree totally.
Awesome. Well, maybe we have time for one more question in any direction. It could be Sarah, it could be Michelle, it could be Tam. Any last lingering thoughts or questions before we wrap up?
Well, I can certainly, I can come up with one.
I've got
one spot right now. Let's see.
Michelle, you've got one?
I've got one for you too.
Okay, let's do it.
I'm curious how long you've been conscious of and working on your brand. Like, for me, I said it was mostly, tied to my professional career, but like, did you start with your professional careers or did you start earlier than that?
Yeah, good question.
Yeah. Do you want to go first, Jade?
Sure, I'll go first. I never used the language of brand, but I think like my style as a human is for people to know what I'm about so they can like interact with me appropriately, I guess. Like I'm super emotional, like I feel things really strongly. So I think I've always been motivated to be really transparent about like what I'm passionate about, what I'm interested in, like what I want to do and pursue. And I think those are like aspects of brand and that you're like translating what's inside to other people. So from that perspective, I think I've been thinking about brand personally for a while, like with my parents, with my teachers, with my friends, like with the people in my life. I think professionally, I did start like thinking about it using the language of brand. And this isn't even like a plug for Sarah, but probably until her session in 2019, to be honest, because I had never had that be part of like my world in a very like specific, tangible way. But it made me think a lot about consistency in particular, like how am I showing up? Like how are people experiencing me on a consistent basis? So in 2019, I started thinking about it a little bit more. But I think if I were to remove the label of brand, it's been something that's been part of my world for a while to think about how am I translating like what I care about, what I need, how I want people to receive me to other people.
Yeah.
Cool.
Sarah, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, working in this space, but I'll give you a little bit of a history. So, I mean, I was raised by a dad who has been in the human potential space his whole career, so I was raised in a home, and even with mom, we are from England, and so it was a certain awareness of how you came across. So there was always, this awareness put on us around how you come across, and everything from manners to just understanding your impact, the impact you have on other people, which is really positive. But of course, I rebelled and rejected it for many years, as you should. And so, but then in my early 30s, all of a sudden, it came back around where I had this opportunity to work with my dad, and he had written a book called Be Your Own Brand. That was what he had just done, was he had entered into the space of personal branding. He co-wrote it with a guy named Carl Speak, who was a branding strategist and expert, and my dad came from the human potential space. So now there was new language around how to talk about yourself. And I was in a place where I was having direct experiences where I worked, where, I was personally really out of alignment. My values were not in alignment with the organization's values. I don't even think they knew what their values were. Yeah. So I was in this experience of, I want to feel valued. I want my values to align. And so that was 2008 when I started a business with my dad. And then that's when I had to do the work. I mean, if I was going to sit and work with organizations around alignment between the corporate brand and then the employee brand and then people's individual brand, I should probably know my own brand. Right. But it's an evolution, it's not a one and done. And so it continually evolves. And so I'm really conscious of that as well. Every time, and I'm in this stuff like on a daily basis, but I am reflecting on myself. And this is a pivotal year for many people, whether you have lost a job or not. It's a huge moment for people to pause and say, what does matter to me? And am I in the right role? If I'm in transition, what do I want to do next? Am I, and so there's a lot more personal reflection going on, which is really awesome, I think. It's really awesome. So again, personal brand is one way to do the work. And I think it's a great way to do it because it translates in many different ways. It translates personally and it translates professionally. So, obviously I'm into it.
Yeah. And actually, it's something you said, Sarah, I do have one last closing thought. I think in some ways too, identity informs how conscious you are of brand too. I think I didn't give myself enough credit in some ways. I think being a Black woman in professional spaces, I never named it brand, but a consciousness of how people perceive me has been a thread throughout my entire career, whether I like it or not. So I think in some ways, the language may not have been the same, but it's still something I was consciously thinking about. And I think based on all of our various identities, depending on the environment we're in, the type of teams we're on, we're conscious of how we're showing up and how people are perceiving us because of those things. So yeah.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Sure.
Awesome.
Yeah. What a good conversation.
Yeah, this was fun. This was fun, even virtually.
Hanging around a bonfire.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we are going to wrap it up here. We wanted this to be kind of a bite-sized conversation for folks to continue thinking about the importance of personal brand in our tech community, but also as leaders outside of technology as well. And we hope you're walking away with a few nuggets and things to consider as you continue on your leadership journey. So I do want to end with, if you have any questions about participating in ACE and being able to have awesome sessions with Sarah about brand and other things like that, please check out our page at MnTech.org. There's a specific page about ACE leadership, or you can reach out directly to me at Jade@MnTech.org as well. Sarah, if folks want to level up their understanding beyond this as it relates to brand, what should they do? How can they connect with you?
Well, LinkedIn, I'm very active on LinkedIn. So Sarah K. McNally, look me up on LinkedIn. And, you know, in all transparency, I'm in my own transition. My company Transform with my dad is retiring, but I am hanging a new shingle called the People Brand Company. So you can find me there, thepeoplebrandcompany.com. I consult with organizations. I do leadership brand coaching specifically about your brand, and I do a lot of online training around it too. So absolute pleasure to be with everyone. Thank you, guys.
Awesome.
Likewise, thank
Well,
you.
good to see you all.
Yeah,
Thank
good
you.
to see
Thank you.
everyone.
Take care.
Bye.